Music has always lived at the crossroads of the sacred and secular. Some carried their faith quietly, while others wore it like armor. These 12 musicians built their foundations in the church, then conquered the entire world. Hit that bell icon so every upload lands straight in your feed. Number 12. Katy Perry. She released her debut album at just 16 years old under her birth name, Katy Hudson, a devout gospel record that sold only a few thousand copies before Red Hill Records folded entirely. The album, released in March 2001, featured worship-style tracks and liner notes quoting scripture. Her parents were both evangelical Pentecostal ministers, and secular music was banned in the household. She reportedly was not even allowed to eat Lucky Charms because luck carried occult connotations. 7 years later, I Kissed a Girl debuted at number 1 across 20 countries and launched one of the most commercially dominant pop careers of the 21st century. Perry became the first artist in history to spend 69 consecutive weeks in the Billboard Hot 100 Top 10 from a single album, surpassing the previous record of 48 straight weeks set by Ace of Base back in 1993 and 1994. The contrast between Katy Hudson and Katy Perry remains one of the most dramatic identity transformations in modern pop music history. Number 11. Amy Grant. Before the crossover hit, before the stadium tours, she was a 15-year-old recording demos in Nashville, Tennessee, shaped entirely by the church music she had grown up performing. Her 1977 self-titled debut on Myrrh Records made her one of the youngest artists signed to a major Christian label, and by 1985 she had become the first CCM artist ever to achieve platinum certification, a milestone that permanently changed how the industry viewed the genre. The secular breakthrough came when Baby Baby reached number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 in April 1991. The backlash from Christian communities was swift and severe, with radio stations dropping her catalog and ministers publicly questioning her faith. Grant pushed forward regardless, selling an estimated 30 million records worldwide and proving that contemporary Christian music could produce genuine mainstream superstars. Number 10. Bob Dylan. Already one of the most celebrated artists in American history, with 18 studio albums and a legacy that had reshaped popular music twice over, he became a born-again Christian and released Slow Train Coming, a hard gospel record that stunned both critics and the devoted fans who had followed him since Greenwich Village. He performed gospel-only set lists on his 1979 and 1980 tours, refusing to play a single pre-conversion hit. Audiences booed, critics mocked, but How to Serve Somebody won the Grammy for Best Male Rock Vocal Performance in 1980. The trilogy of gospel albums, Slow Train Coming, Saved, and Shot of Love, remains one of the most audacious creative pivots any musician has ever made at the peak of their cultural power. Number 9. Whitney Houston. She began singing gospel at New Hope Baptist Church in Newark, New Jersey, performing her first solo around age 11 alongside her mother, Sissy Houston, a renowned gospel vocalist in her own right. The technical foundation she built there, the breath control, the phrasing, the emotional depth, became the engine behind one of the greatest voices of the 20th century. Clive Davis signed her to Arista Records in 1983, and her 1985 debut spent 14 weeks at number 1 on the Billboard 200. She became the first and only artist to have 7 consecutive number 1 singles on the Hot 100, a streak spanning 1985 to 1988 across her first 2 albums. Every producer who worked with her pointed to gospel as the irreplaceable ingredient that made her technically untouchable. Before we continue, which of these artists surprised you most with their faith background? Did you grow up hearing any of these voices on the radio? Drop a comment below and let us know where in the world you are watching from. Number 8. Little Richard.
I am thinking of a beautiful...
At the absolute peak of his commercial powers in October 1957, he was on a tour flight from Melbourne to Sydney when he looked out the window, saw what he believed was a sign from God in the night sky. Some accounts say it was Sputnik crossing the horizon and announced to his bandmates that he was quitting rock and roll to become a preacher. He threw his rings into the Hunter River near Newcastle and enrolled at Oakwood College, a Seventh-day Adventist institution in Huntsville, Alabama. The album he recorded during that period, King of the Gospel Singers, was released on Mercury Records in 1962 and demonstrated that his vocal power translated perfectly to sacred music. He returned to secular recording that same year, then left again, then returned repeatedly over the following decades in a cycle that defined his entire public life. He called rock and roll the devil's music in numerous interviews, then performed it to sold-out arenas, a contradiction he acknowledged openly and seemed to relish entirely.
Then I am.
Number 7. Kings of Leon.
I've been roaming around, always looking down at all I see.
Their father, Ivan Leon Followell, was a traveling minister in the United Pentecostal Church, which meant the three Followell brothers, Caleb, Nathan, and Jared, along with their cousin Matthew, spent their childhoods moving between small southern towns, attending revival meetings, and listening to virtually no secular music whatsoever. Television was restricted, radio was monitored, the outside world was largely off limits. Their debut album, Youth and Young Manhood, released in July 2003 on RCA Records, contained more than a few traces of that Southern Gothic upbringing beneath its garage rock exterior. By 2008, Use Somebody from Only by the Night had topped charts in multiple countries and reached the top 5 on the Billboard Hot 100, while the album sold over 7 million copies worldwide. The Sons of a Pentecostal Preacher became one of the defining rock bands of their generation.
Someone like you and all you know and how you speak.
Number 6. Aretha Franklin.
Sweet honey, guess what's sweet love?
Her father, Reverend C.L. Franklin of New Bethel Baptist Church in Detroit, was one of the most prominent ministers in America, a man who counted Martin Luther King Jr. among his close friends. She recorded her first gospel album around age 14. Soul contemporaries like Sam Cooke recognized immediately that her voice carried something beyond ordinary talent. Columbia Records signed her in 1960, hoping to shape her into a jazz-pop crossover act, and spent 6 years largely misunderstanding what she was capable of. When she moved to Atlantic Records in 1967, producer Jerry Wexler let her gospel instincts lead every session. Respect reached number 1 in June 1967, holding that position for 2 weeks on the Billboard Hot 100 while dominating the R&B chart for 8 straight weeks, winning her 2 Grammy Awards. Her 1972 live gospel album, Amazing Grace, remains the best-selling live gospel album ever recorded, a milestone she achieved while already reigning as the Queen of Soul. Number 5. Alice Cooper. His father, Ether Maroney Fournier, was a minister and assistant pastor in the Church of Jesus Christ, a restorationist denomination, and young Vincent Fournier was born in Detroit and raised in a strict religious household where Christian values were foundational. When his family relocated to Phoenix, Arizona during his teenage years, he carried that faith with him even as his artistic identity pushed further into darkness. The transformation into Alice Cooper, the snake-wielding, guillotine theatrics shock rock icon, seems like the furthest possible journey from that upbringing. He has stated openly in multiple interviews that he is a practicing born-again Christian who reads his Bible daily and attends church regularly, viewing his stage show as a morality play where evil is always punished by the final curtain. His albums, Welcome to My Nightmare and Billion Dollar Babies Together, sold millions of copies and redefined what rock theater could be. The man who invented shock rock and the devout churchgoer have coexisted inside the same person for over 50 years. Before we get to the top 4, which of these stories genuinely caught you off guard? There are still 4 entries on this list, and at least one of them will completely reshape how you remember their legacy. Stay with us.
Welcome to my breakdown. I hope I didn't.
Number 4. Al Green. In 1974, he was the most successful soul artist in America, with a string of gold albums on High Records and a run of hits that included Let's Stay Together, which spent 9 weeks at number 1 on the Billboard R&B chart and briefly topped the Hot 100 in February 1972. He was also beginning to experience what he described as a deep spiritual crisis, a growing conviction that his secular career was pulling him away from something more important. A dramatic personal incident in October 1974 accelerated that conviction and led him to become an ordained pastor at Full Gospel Tabernacle in Memphis in 1976. He walked away from mainstream soul music almost entirely, recording exclusively gospel material and winning multiple Grammy Awards in sacred categories. He returned to secular recording in 1988 with the album I Get Joy, welcomed back by an audience that had never truly forgotten. Number 3. Marvin Gaye.
I just want to ask the question, who really cares?
His father, Marvin Gaye Sr., was a minister in the House of God, a strict Pentecostal denomination, and raised his children in a household where discipline was severe and spiritual expectation was absolute. The tension between that upbringing and his desire to create music rooted in love, politics, and human vulnerability defined nearly every album he ever made. What's Going On, released in May 1971 on Tamla Records, is consistently ranked among the greatest albums in recorded history, with Rolling Stone placing it at number 1 on their 500 greatest albums list across multiple editions. Berry Gordy famously called it the worst record he had ever heard before it became one of the best-selling albums of 1971, certified double platinum in the United States. The sacred and the physical were never truly separate in Gaye's music, and that spiritual tension lives in every note. Number 2. Carrie Underwood.
She was driving last Friday on her way to Cincinnati on a snow-white Christmas.
She grew up attending the First Free Will Baptist Church in Chakota, Oklahoma, where she sang in the congregation from childhood. Faith was not an accessory to her identity. It was the center of it, something she carried directly into her career on American Idol in 2005 and never set aside regardless of commercial pressure. Jesus, Take the Wheel, released in November 2005, reached number 1 on the Billboard Hot Country Songs chart and won 2 Grammys, including Best Female Country Vocal Performance and Best Country Song. She has sold over 85 million records worldwide and won 8 Grammy Awards total, making her one of the most decorated country artists of the century. Faith, she has said, is non-negotiable, regardless of what the industry expects.
Jesus, take the wheel, take it from my hand.
Number 1. Elvis Presley.
When I in awesome wonder.
He grew up in the Assembly of God Church in Tupelo, Mississippi, attending services with his parents, Vernon and Gladys, from the earliest years of his life. Gospel quartets, sacred harmonies, and the emotional intensity of Pentecostal worship shaped his ear before he ever walked into Sun's studio. Sam Phillips heard something in his voice that felt entirely unique, and gospel was a significant part of what he was hearing. In a career defined by world records, sold-out tours, and cultural transformation, his 3 Grammy Awards were won not for Hound Dog, not for Jailhouse Rock, and not for Suspicious Minds. Every Grammy Elvis ever received was for gospel. Best Sacred Performance for the How Great Thou Art album in 1967, Best Inspirational Performance for He Touched Me in 1972, and Best Inspirational Performance again for the live How Great Thou Art in 1974. Gospel historians consider his contributions among the most significant of the 20th century. The king of rock and roll always kept one hand reaching toward the sacred.